Hey folks, welcome to Black Gumbo Southern Gardening. I'm going to plant a bare root fruit tree today. Okay, so I got my bare root elderberry tree and it came in this box and I'm about to open it up and we get to see what's inside. We like elderberries. Elderberries are good medicinal fruit. We use it in making elixirs and elderberry syrup for cold and flu season. Very useful plant. I look forward to using it in fresh ways and other ways, but we got to grow them first. So when you get a bare root fruit tree, normally you're getting a tree that comes from a grower, a certified grower. You want to buy from a certified grower. And with elderberries especially, you want to have two different varieties because they need each other to cross-pollinate. One single tree will give you some fruit, but having two different varieties will give you a whole lot more fruit. This one is a York, and I also have an Adams, and I'm going to plant them both on this side of my house. I don't have an optimal growing area, but I got to do the best I can. So this is the north side of my house. They get enough sun that transits east to west. I got a big oak tree right here that casts some shade, but I'm going to kind of plop them down where they'll get a lot of sun, and hopefully they'll take off. My grapevines do fine on the north side of my house in this little channel between my neighbor's house and mine. So I'm hoping the same for the elderberry. So let's take a look at what we got here. That's a tiny little fella, and it's tied to the bottom. Very well done. So this is how it has arrived. It's wrapped up. It's starting to look like it's putting out some fresh growth. When you buy a bare root tree, you're going to get a stick like this. If you've never done it before, you might be alarmed thinking, wow, that's crazy, that's not going to grow. But what it is a dormant tree. And this dormant tree is ready to go in the ground now in the spring and will put out new growth, new roots. But we're going to unwrap this and get the roots exposed. They usually come packed in some sort of a moisturizing stuff like ground newspaper. There's a product you can buy that's like a gel, and we're going to open this up and see. All right, so here's what we have. I put a good cut on my finger with this knife today. Maybe all the way to the bone. Yeah. All right, I can see it's packed in mulch. Oh, sorry, bumped you there. Packed in mulch. We have really moist roots. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put this in water and I'm going to let it hydrate for about an hour. This is interesting. I was expecting a single branched tree. So I'm just going to place it in the water, let it sit here for about an hour. You don't want to go overnight. You might start, initiating some root rot. But yeah, this looks pretty good. It's actually got some shoots coming out, some new growth looking like it wants to come out here. This tree will actually be very bushy. I can tell already it's going to have a very bush-like tendency. When planting a tree that needs sun, you want to consider your shadows. My house casts a shadow here, and so I'm going to plant my tree just outside of that shadow so that in this time of the spring, that tree will be in a lot of shade. I'm going to put my other one right about where my tripod is there, and hopefully the filtered light from my oak tree won't be too much. And as the sun goes down, this area is bathed in sunlight because the sun goes down over there. And so you get a lot of filtered light here, but in the late spring and in the summer, this shadow moves back that way a little more, and this area will be full sun for a lot of the day. I'm hoping that'll do. My soil here is very strong clay. It's actually black gumbo clay, hence the name of my channel. And so I want to try to break up some of that. It's very fertile stuff, but I'm going to dig a hole that will fit the root ball. Now once I get through the sod, down below I've got some looser soil here, and I'm going to try to retain that. I learned from Gardener Scott that you don't want to put a bunch of amendments in your soil in the hole. And the reason for that is he said that your plant's going to send roots out into the native soil, and that's where it's going to live. If you put a bunch of fertilizer, a bunch of really nice soil in this hole, especially in my context where the walls of this hole are going to take some work for those roots to penetrate. The roots are just going to stay there. They're going to be there happy. They're going to live in that, and they're going to get root bound. So yeah, my soil is pretty heavy clay, so I know things can grow in it and things can work through clay over time. So to give my trees the best head start on that, I'm going to plant them directly in the soil they're going to live in, and I'm not going to amend them. I think this hole will work. All right, I'm going to wait an hour and we're going to put our tree right in there. Whew, I'm going to do a test. I'm going to fill this hole with some water and see how quickly it drains. Because in my area, I have notoriously poor draining soil. And so what's going to happen is if this doesn't drain within an hour, I'm going to have to dig a little bit of a channel headed that way. That's when my natural slope goes that way. And I'm going to dig a little bit of a channel and loosen that soil up there, this clay. And that will help this hole to drain into kind of our natural drainage area here. It's real moist over here because the way our homes are built, we have a channel between our homes that takes the water away. But if this doesn't drain in an hour, yeah, that might be bad news. So we'll see. Always test your drainage when you're putting in a tree. I have waterlogged and killed so many fruit trees in my life that this is something I've learned to do. And yeah, it takes some work to dig a channel, but it'll be good in the end. It's been a bit. I stuck that root in there to mark my water level, and it has not gone down very much at all. So I'm going to have to dig a little bit of a drainage channel going that way. Yeah, that's not encouraging. So on a grafted plant, you'll notice that your rootstock will have a nodule here with like a scion growing off, and you can tell where the graft was. You don't want to bury that graft. You want to keep the rootstock underground. I'm actually going to backfill a little bit, and all that loose soil down there will help this plant. I'm going to go to about right there. I'm going to let the roots just kind of hang out down there, cover them up with my hand, and work the soil in. This is a messy process. And as I'm putting this very clayey soil in here, I'm also breaking it up with my hands a bit. I want the native soil in here as much as possible. That's what this plant has to live in. It might as well get used to it now. Make sure you orient your plant the way you want it right now. It's hard to come back later. And I am going to try to get some of this dirt off of the sod, this topsoil here. That's good stuff. You can see there's a bit of a divot here. I'm going to try to bring that up all the way to bury those roots. So I'm almost out of soil here. You always lose some soil, it seems, when you're digging around planting trees. I'm going to show you a trick when you're planting into a lawn like this to help your plant not have to compete with the lawn. All these roots down here are competing for the very nutrients my tree needs. So what we're going to do is we're going to put a little ring around here. I'm going to use bricks. You can use stones, you can use wood, whatever. And I'm going to fill it with mulch so the grass will be suppressed in this area. Here's the beauty of a gorilla cart. You can get every last nugget. Now, a lot of my trees on my property will grow most of their roots fairly shallow because we have black gumbo clay here, and that clay is hard to get through. They'll get through it over the years, but when they're young, they'll spread their roots around throughout this upper 6 inches of relatively uncompacted soil. And there's a lot of good minerals in here. This is a very good clay for mineralization, but it's not a good clay for drainage. So I'm hopeful that this plant will do fine growing in that top 6 inches for a while until it gets established. See, we've planted now up to I just knocked off a growth bud. We've planted up to the spot where the roots are now all in the ground. And I'm not going to mulch right away, but I'm going to let it get established and water it in and watch this clay and see what happens to it, see if it sinks down any or subsides. I come back and top fill with some topsoil. But yeah, I will come in here and put a ring around it so I don't weed eat right up against it when I'm doing my lawn work. And that will help it not to compete with the surrounding lawn. All right, so I'm going to water it in pretty good here. There's all that water that's still down in there, but this will just help settle that clay down, settle that soil down, and make sure that it stays hydrated as it gets used to its new home. You can see this little channel I dug here will help the water come down this way. And right in here, this is always moist and wet and drains down to our street there. Between our houses, they put these little gullies. But there it is. Doesn't look like much right now, but come back and we will see this is going to grow into a nice big bush, 8 feet tall. 2 main growing stems there, and I'm going to put the other one in probably right there. What this will keep me from doing is mowing this guy down on accident. I'm going to put some mulch in here. He's starting to blossom out now. This just is my reminder that you know, I don't want to cut this guy down. Okay, so it's been a few days. It's been about 5 days, and you can see that it is waking up from dormancy and putting on some new growth. And these buds here will start to grow out. And I'll put about an inch of mulch up close to the tree, but over on the sides of my little border here, I'll put a bunch more mulch all the way up to the top just to suppress that grass growth. And what this will do is will help that tree get established in this soil and not have to compete with the lawn over here, at least in this little area, until it gets established. And this is mulch from last year, so it's kind of broken down. I can get it kind of thin over here where I need it to be thin, but I can really pile it up over here to keep the grass suppressed a bit. I might need a little more, but for now, that's good. All right, we got an elderberry in. I got one more to do. I'll do that later. For now, that makes me happy. This is a York elderberry. All right, so that's it. That's all we're going to do, and we're going to let this plant establish itself and get used to the native conditions, and it should thrive. So that is how I plant a bare root fruit tree in my lawn, in my yard, in my native soil. You just get that tree used to the experience of living in the soil it's going to live in all its life. No additives, no fertilizer, no root stimulator, none of that stuff. Just get it in there, and if it is a plant that's tailored for your area, that is oftentimes found native in your area, it will thrive. It'll do just fine. So I've come out maybe 3 or 4 times over the past 5 days that plant's been out there. I've given it some water, but I don't want to give it too much because you saw how slow that hole drains, and I don't want those roots down there to get, root rot. Some of them will. It's almost inevitable that some of them will. What I want my tree to do now is send out a shallow root system in the topsoil, about the first 6 inches of soil, and so we've enabled that. So yeah, we'll check in on it over the next couple of months on the various garden tours we do. Thank you for joining me on Black Gumbo Southern Gardening. I'm going to go in before I get soaked. Please subscribe to us if you haven't already. Man, most of our subscribers watch our videos, but 80% of the people who watch our videos are not subscribers. We'd really appreciate it if you subscribe. That'd be real helpful. Like us on Facebook and Instagram. Happy gardening to you. Bye-bye.